How do I determine what's a good project to invest in? What's something that's going to be around where it's going to have that utility? You've got 5 steps to underwriting a token project and making, your first purchase. So I'm curious if you could just sort of walk us through that.
So when we're starting our due diligence, typically this is going to be days or weeks, or, we've worked with a startup where we built a relationship for 6 months, but at the base level, right, we look at the team. Anything you're going to invest in, even if you're investing in another fund, a syndication, or it's a startup, you're going to look at that team first. You're going to look for that team to have the ability to execute what they lay out on the roadmap. Do they have the skill set? Do they have the understanding? We also want to see that in this space, we want them to have somewhat of ability to be able to pivot and be able to not necessarily be able to stray from their business plan that they maybe laid out in the beginning, because as you're building in this space, you're going to learn quickly that things change rapidly, laws come into place, the customer might want something different. The project and the founders be able to iterate and change things along the way is very important. One thing we've done over the last few years is we also run a podcast, and we try to get a interview directly with the team. Mm-hmm. So you can do research through Discord, Twitter, and all these different platforms, but there's nothing better than actually having communication and open line with somebody at the team. So again, a podcast, direct contact, or, this week, Consensus is in Texas. And that's a good opportunity for people to go to those conferences and go to those booths and speak to those teams directly to have an idea of what they're executing and what the skill set is behind that team, and build your own judgment for who they are as a person, that you'd be willing to invest in them and that project. So that would be, the one is definitely the team. So another area we look at is going to deal with the tokenomics, right? And there's all different opinions here. There's not necessarily right or wrong, but you just kind of find out over time. Some things you want to look for is maybe whale concentrations or wallets that have a high percentage of the existing circulating supply. You might want that circulating supply to be more diversified into multiple wallets, right? Because the more wallets or active wallets on the network is going to mean more users, which means the better that network effect will have. And ultimately, the goal is to increase the price of that token based on the network effects. So looking at the active wallets, right? And then concentration in whale wallets. I think as we all seen with the DeFi season, we don't like high, fully diluted valuations, right? Or a low percentage of circulating supply where a lot of the tokens will be used for incentives, which will be inflationary to all the other tokens and price points, right? So we prefer a higher circulating supply, or fully understanding the vesting schedule and how long that will be, right?
Sure.
Big one, definitely community and the users of the platform, right? I mean, there's a lot of noise on Twitter and in Discord, but
yes, there is.
If you spend a good amount of time there, you start to understand how strong-handed or diamond-handed that community is, if they're willing to contribute. I know over the last few years, we've seen maybe how strong a community like Cardano has been and how well that has done for the price, despite maybe their achievements on development. I guess Link Marines was kind of coming out of the bear market, why most things were selling off. So I think there's substance behind that and understanding how well the community is tied to a project. And ultimately, the discussion they're having within these communities, is it more about the development of that project, or is it more about the price pump? And I think that's really, you should, as a listener, you should go in to these communities and just read the comments and start to learn what people are saying, and go into 5-10 different Discords, and you'll get an idea from the chatter of what's happening there. I think one of the important things we're seeing over the last few years, one company, Electric Capital, puts out the report on developer activity on an annual basis.
Mm-hmm.
This is important, watching what developers and how many developers go to what projects, and ultimately what that project has in regards to incentives, or a lot of times you'll see grants for these new projects or developers to come over. That gives you an idea of the stability and where that project is going. So in theory, the more developers a project attracts, the better off it's going to see in the future. And if developers start leaving a project, it might be leaving for toxicity, in that community, they're not hitting certain things on the roadmap, whatever that may be. And so if they're leaving, that also might be a sign that that project's not doing as well. Another one will be the funding and capital. Because to piggyback off the developer, right, we need to see that these projects have the treasury to sustain these bear markets. Because what happened last time was,
what did we learn about that recently?
We learned last cycle too, is that out of the 17, 18, a lot of ICOs were done in ETH, right? So they raised ETH. And then what happened in the bear market is ETH went way down. So you think about, they didn't convert their treasury into a stable coin or a USD at that time. And so their treasury diminished, down over time also, and then they can't afford to retain their staff, and that project goes out of business. So understanding the funding behind a project, you could go to Crunchbase or Dove Metrics and get some of this information. You could also go to that Twitter and Discord again, look for their announcements, find out that they have enough in reserves to be able to develop for the next couple of years and attract those developers to that ecosystem.
I think these are all, when you look at it, it just all connects. And that's how you can, hopefully, obviously there's no guarantees, but you can hopefully determine this is a project that's likely to be around.